Okay, so today's lesson is going to be on the impacts of inflation. All right, so here we have three items: an apple, gasoline, and diapers. And we're going to imagine that we're taking a trip to the local grocery store, and there are going to be prices that I expect on these items, and then we're going to see how an impact of an unexpected price change will affect me. Okay, so let's say that I go to the grocery store and I am expecting a pound of apples to cost $1 per pound. However, when I get to the grocery store, apples have increased in price to $10 a pound. Clearly, this would be an adverse situation for me as I want to purchase the apples, but they have increased in price exponentially. Therefore, this would hurt me, or this inflation would hurt my ability to purchase the products that I'm used to purchasing. Now, on the way home from the supermarket, I stopped to get some gasoline. I am expecting gasoline to be about $2 a gallon. However, when I get to the gas station, I see that the gas prices have dropped to $1 a gallon. Well, this reduction in price is actually going to help me as I am able to now buy gas or free up some money to buy other things as a result of the decrease in price. Again, on the way home, I stopped to get some Pampers diapers for my 2-year-old, and I'm expecting a box of diapers to be $26 a box, and when I get there, it's $106 a box. So this inflation would clearly hurt me as it would strip my purchasing power of other items. Remember that inflation is a general increase in price level. However, prices can go up rapidly, they can hyperinflate. But either way, if you are not expecting the inflation and you have not properly prepared for the inflation, you can be hurt adversely by the inflation. Inflation does involve the general rise in prices, but it is just as much about the purchasing power of the dollar. So when prices rise, the value of the dollar decreases. Purchasing power is the amount of things that we can buy. If the price of this bottle of water goes from $1 to $2, now my dollar cannot buy as many water bottles. Therefore, I need more money to buy the same good that I purchased the day before with less money. So purchasing power represents our ability to purchase goods and services based on the dollar and the value of that dollar. During this lesson, we're going to look at people that are affected adversely by inflation. One of those groups are people that live on a fixed income. Now, there's lots of examples of people that live on a fixed income. If your income is fixed, that means that it does not increase when prices go up. Many different contracts are indexed to inflation, where they receive a cost of living adjustment. That is a COLA. So a COLA is when your income will rise with inflation, and that is true in most cases for Social Security recipients or people that are on a retirement pension plan. But some contracts just anticipate inflation and build in a COLA to that contract. Now, this is a graph representing Social Security COLA, and what you can see is that Social Security recipients received, for the most part, increases throughout the mid-2000s to 2018. However, in 2009 and 2010, they did not receive any increase in their cost of living, as well as 2015. So the reason they did not receive an increase in their cost of living, or they received no COLA, was that inflation was very low in those preceding years. So in 2008 or 2009, of course, we had the recession, and in 2014, inflation was very low. But nonetheless, Social Security payments are indexed to inflation. Now let's look at how purchasing power can be impacted by inflation. Let's imagine that your employer says to you, we are going to give you a 10% increase in pay from the previous year. And you think, wow, that's great, that's amazing, I'd really appreciate that. However, when you turn on the news, you find out that the market basket of goods and services purchased by the average urban consumer has increased by 15%, which means you are actually 5% worse off than you were the previous year. So what that means is you received a nominal wage of 10%, but in real terms, you lost money. In real terms, you received a decrease of 5%. And the moral of the story here is that your salary must keep up with inflation, or you are losing purchasing power. Now, inflation can either be anticipated or unanticipated. Anticipated inflation is expected inflation. And of course, we expect about 2 to 3% every year. It's normal to have some inflation. In fact, it actually speaks to the health of an economy. If we have some inflation, particularly demand pull inflation, that indicates that the economy is moving along as it should. Unanticipated inflation, however, is when inflation becomes out of control or volatile or hard to predict. So unanticipated inflation is inflation that is higher than we expected. To determine the impact of inflation on interest rates, we look at a formula. We can say that the real interest rate is equal to the nominal minus inflation. or the nominal is equal to inflation plus the real. So here's a scenario. Let's say you have $1,000 and you put it into a savings account. You're going to earn 3% simple interest, or you'll have $30 extra at the end of the year. If inflation is 2%, how much have you really gained? Well, in real terms, you've gained 1%. Nominally, you gained $30, but you really only gained 10, and that is because of the increase in price level. Again, the moral of the story is your money must keep up with inflation or you are losing purchasing power. In this case, the 2% increase in price level of the market basket stripped the value of your earnings. Okay, so let's talk about who is impacted by inflation. First of all, savers. We have a person that puts $100 into a fixed interest savings account. If that person had that $100 on them today, then they could buy $100 worth of goods and services. Now, let's fast forward a year. We're expecting inflation to be 3% over the course of the year. If inflation is indeed 3%, then they would need 3% more dollars to purchase the same amount of goods and services they did the previous year. Therefore, they would need $103 to buy that same amount of goods and services. Now, if they earn the 3%, then it's a no harm, no foul. They can buy the same amount of goods and services, thus keeping up with inflation. However, if prices unexpectedly rise to 4%, and this individual only has 3% more dollars, then they have to take something out of their market basket. They have effectively lost $1. So, unexpected inflation can impact savers adversely. They would be hurt. The next group of people that are affected by inflation are people that live on a fixed income. So, I'm a teacher, and I receive a fixed income, which is based on a prearranged contract, which lasts at this point for 2 years at a time. If we expect inflation to be 3%, then every single year that I work, I need 3% more money to compensate for the increase in the cost of living. If prices rise unexpectedly to 6%, then I have automatically lost 3% of my earnings. Therefore, I would be hurt by unexpected inflation. Now, we talked before about Social Security recipients, how they do have a COLA built into their contract, which is pegged or indexed to inflation. So if inflation rises, they get a bump. There are a lot of arguments that can be made that there are some weaknesses in this system, such as that elderly people or Social Security recipients do not spend their money the same way that the average urban consumer does. They may spend more money on medical, they spend less money on maybe clothing or something like that, but nonetheless, they do have a COLA built into their contract. So someone that is living on Social Security, which is pegged to inflation or indexed to inflation, will at the very least be unaffected in a generalized way. As I mentioned before, sometimes people have this built into their contract for wages. And as far as pensions go, if you have a pension that is adjusted for inflation, you also could be unaffected by inflation. Now, teachers in the state of Georgia receive a 1.5% increase in pay in retirement every 6 months if there is inflation. Now, if inflation is low and they still receive that 1.5% or 3% annually, then they are actually helped by inflation. Now, here's an example of a young teacher who becomes an old teacher. Let's say this young teacher is receiving wages of $3,000 a month in 2016 when they first start their job. They have a mortgage which costs them $1,000. We're going to say that their mortgage has a fixed interest rate. So that mortgage is not going to change, let's just say in a general way, over the course of 30 years. However, what does change over the course of this 30 years is this teacher's income. As they receive cost of living adjustments, that 30-year period is going to see them double their wages. So their wages have doubled. Why have they doubled? Well, they have a COLA built into their contract. That COLA is adjusted for inflation. So their wages went up due to inflation. Therefore, they can now pay this mortgage easier than they could when they first started as a teacher. Subsequently, this teacher in some ways is helped by the inflation. They borrowed money, they locked in their interest rate, they hedged against inflation. Time passed, they got paid more, but they can pay their mortgage back much easier than they could prior to that point. Now here's another example. Let's say that this man here on the right wants to purchase a bottle of water, but doesn't have the money to do it. So what do? They go to the bank and they borrow the dollar. So this guy borrows $1, purchases his bottle of water, and says, look, I'll pay you back. On Tuesday, the bottle of water doubles in price. Now, he bought the bottle of water on Monday, so he's good. But now he's paying this banker back. When he pays this banker back, is he paying the banker back with dollars that are as valuable? No, that dollar has less value as a result of the inflation. So that increase in the bottle of water to $2 stripped the value of that $1 bill that he was loaned, and when he returns it to this banker, that dollar will have less value. In other words, the banker is being paid back with less valuable dollars. Lenders are affected adversely by unexpected inflation. And the reason is they're loaning money out expecting a certain rate, but if inflation is higher than they're receiving, let's say 4% is what they're receiving, 6% inflation, they're actually being paid back with less valuable dollars. Okay, another group of people that are affected adversely by inflation are low income. If you think about it, somebody that's working minimum wage at a grocery store is not guaranteed a raise when prices go up. So if the price of goods and services are increasing exponentially and someone's working minimum wage, chances are they're probably not receiving a raise. Therefore, low income or minimum wage workers are hurt by high prices or prices that go up beyond what they're expecting. Now, here's a picture of Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is a very wealthy man. And quite frankly, if we have 4% inflation or 5% inflation, that probably doesn't mean a lot to Jeff Bezos. This is not going to have an impact on him. So it is commonly said that the wealthy who have a lot of their money invested, their money is exceeding inflation. So they don't really have to worry about the inflation as much as they have more money available to them. At the very least, Jeff Bezos would probably be unaffected by marginal increases in inflation. Now, he might care about hyperinflation, but if it's above normal inflation, it's probably not going to affect him as much as it would someone that's a low-income worker. Okay, let's take the last group. Let's say that you and I agree to a 3-year contract for babysitting services. You're going to babysit my children, and we're going to lock this in for 3 years. We settle on $15 an hour. In other words, I'm going to pay you $15 an hour to take care of my kids. Now, let's imagine that prices rise exponentially. However, your pay is locked in for 3 years. Well, here's the deal. While your wages stay the same, everything else is going up in price. And again, this can hurt you because you have locked in your contract for multiple years. As a result, the inflation is stripping the value of the money you are earning, and you are hurt by this inflationary condition. Who is helped is the firm. The firm is now paying back the worker, or in this case, I am paying you less money to take care of my children. So here's a little table where we can break all this down. Hurt, helped, unaffected. Again, who is hurt by inflation are low income or fixed income workers. People that are savers that have relatively low interest rates in their savings account, or lenders who are paid back with less valuable dollars on loans that they made. So low income, savers, lenders, and people on a fixed income. Who is unaffected are people that have a COLA that is indexed to inflation, borrowers that are paying back at fixed interest rates with less valuable dollars, and firms, like the babysitting example, that have made prearranged fixed income contracts where the wages are not going to change. Okay, so this is an introduction to inflation and the impact of inflation on these various groups. Hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.